What's going on, guys? The first day of NHL free agency is now over, and it was pretty crazy. As you can see on screen there, almost $1 billion was spent on all the contracts. I can see 154 total signings. On to day 2, we've already got 122 million, so between the 2 days, over $1 billion in contracts. That's crazy. So I just want to go through, guys, looking at every single team and give you my grade on how I think they've done so far. So we're going to start with the Anaheim Ducks. I'm going to only look at one-way contracts, like dude signed entry-level deals. You kind of just expect that, so it doesn't matter. Same with, AHL signings. The Ducks, really, the two big signings for them, Ryan Strome and Frank Vatrano. Vatrano there, 3 years, $3.65 million. Seems a little expensive for like a third-line winger. Ryan Strome even 5x5. The guy really can't hit the net, but he did do pretty decent in New York, and the Ducks have a ton of cap space to spend. I will say I think the big thing with the Anaheim Ducks is the fact that they still have $31 million in cap space. Now, I would like them to utilize that a little bit more. As you guys will see, the next team, the Arizona Coyotes, I think they've done a much better job, but $30 million, maybe they're waiting for some team like, say, the Ottawa Senators to pay them to take Nikita Zaitsev's contract or something along those lines. So, so far they haven't utilized the cap space. They do have to hit the floor, which I think means they have to spend another $10 million or so. Lundstrom and Vaakanainen aren't going to cost that, so they're not done yet, but so far, I'm probably just going to give them a C. I feel like they haven't really done anything that crazy, and I feel like both their free agent signings are pretty average, and like I said, I'd like to see them, use that cap space to bring in some picks and prospects, to bring on other teams' bad contracts, and speaking of that, you got the Arizona Coyotes here. So, Troy Stecher, for 1 year, 1.25, I think that's a really solid contract. Nick Bjugstad for $900K isn't bad. They brought Christian Fischer back. Vejmelka was already signed, so they just kind of, did some tidying up, and as I mentioned, they actually got a second and a third round pick from the New York Rangers to take on Patrick Nemeth's contract, 2 years at $2.5 million. Like, that's not even a lot of money for him. The fact that they got a second and third from the Rangers for that, I think, is great work. Obviously, might like to see them be a bit more active than simply re-signing Fisher, bringing in Bjugstad, Stecher, Joshua Brown there. I feel like, still, I really like the Patrick Nemeth trade, so I'm going to give them a B. I think so far looking pretty good. I mean, Arizona has been a masterclass of utilizing cap space, the Zach Kassian trade as well. Like, they've done a great job. Boston Bruins here. So, they signed A.J. Greer. That's all they did. Now, they don't really have any cap space, $5 million. They didn't make that trade, though. Eric Haula for Pavel Zacha. I feel like Halla's probably the better player right now, but Zacha's younger with a higher ceiling. Still not sure what's going to happen with Patrice Bergeron, which is probably why they have that cap space. David Krejci as well, rumored to come back. So, I don't know, the Bruins really didn't do anything. Would I like to see them do something? Maybe trade out some of these like big defensive contracts. Again, the Zacha trade, I didn't mind. So, they don't really do anything. I don't know, I guess it's hard to give them a failing grade, so I'll probably just give them a D. As again, they just really didn't do much. And next year, guys, we got the Buffalo Sabres. So, they bring in Lyubushkin at $2.75, which is probably a little pricey for him. He's like a bottom pair, kind of physical defenseman. They get Victor Olofsson re-signed, 2 years, $4.75. Pretty good value. Bringing Eric Comrie to probably be the backup behind Craig Anderson, maybe compete. I'm not sure if Luukkonen's ready to be in NHL yet. Hinostroza there, 1 year, 1.7 as well, isn't too bad. So yeah, I mean, they basically just kind of did some average signings, but they didn't mess up and do any bad signings either. So a bit more active than Boston. I don't know. I'll probably give them like a C-, I guess. For the teams that really don't do much, it's hard to obviously give that grade. Calgary Flames are up next here. So, let's see, what do they do? Dennis Gilbert there. Nikita Zadorov re-signed. 2 years, $3.75 million. That seems like a lot for Zadorov, physical D-man. Trevor Lewis brought back. Nicholas Milosh. Kevin Rooney there. So, I mean, the signings aren't too bad. I think Zadorov's a little expensive. The big thing, guys, Johnny Gaudreau lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets. I've got to give them an F. I have to give the Calgary Flames an F. You lose your best player for nothing. Obviously, they didn't really have any control over it, but still, they lost him, and they have not replaced him yet. I think Zadorov got paid a bit too much money, actually. Kachuk, Mangiapane still don't have new contracts. Same with Shillington. I feel bad for the Flames fans, as I'm essentially kicking you guys while you're down, but I got to give you that failing grade. Now, the Carolina Hurricanes are up next here, so complete opposite. I think Andre Kasha, great contract, 1 year, 1.5. Even if he's only healthy for half the season, those 40 games are going to give you some pretty good production. That's actually the only signing they made, but of course they made two huge trades. They got Max Pacioretty and Dylan Coghlan for free from the Vegas Golden Knights, and then they got Brent Burns for pretty much nothing at 34% retention, so $5.28 million contract. He's older, but I mean their window is to win now. I feel like the fact that they got Pacioretty and Brent Burns, two guys basically guaranteed to give you 50 points on a full season, if not more, plus Dylan Coghlan without giving up anything or virtually anything is amazing work. And I think the Ondrej Kase signing was really good as well. I'm giving them an A+. I think Hurricanes did great on the first day of free agency. If you guys don't agree, then that is fine. Up next, Chicago Blackhawks. So we can't really count the draft trades or whatever. This is about free agency so far. So they signed both Max Domi and Andre Athanasiou there for 1 year, $3 million each. I feel like those are pretty good deals. If they have a good season, you can definitely trade them at the deadline, and if their season's only okay, you could probably still trade them with like 50% retention. Alex Stalock there was signed. Colin Blackwell, 2 years, $1.2 million. Sam Lafferty, that was before. So I think like their signings there were pretty decent. Some guys that should be able to be traded at the deadline, which is I think what they're trying to do. Obviously they're tanking for Bedard, so really not too bad, honestly. I'm going to give them a C+. I feel like, with what they had, what they're trying to do, they did a decent job. And I just remembered while editing this, guys, that Chicago let Strome and Kubalik go to free agency for free rather than giving them each a qualifying offer. And I think that counts as free agency because obviously it's a signing. So for that reason, dropping them to a D+. Next here, guys, the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. So Darren Helm they bring back 1.25. I was hoping they would. I'm still a Darren Helm fan, even though he's not in Detroit anymore. Josh Manson gets signed. 4 years, $4.5 million. I think that's a solid contract. Arturi Lehkonen there, 5 years, $4.5. Maybe a bit expensive in my opinion for Lehkonen. I know he's kind of like, the speedy guy. You're a really good third liner, in which case I think it's a bit pricey. Like I'd probably want him more around the $3 million mark, but it is what it is. Nichushkin there as well got paid long term, 8 years, $6 million. Now they lost Darcy Kemper, but they made that trade for Alexander Georgiev. I'm counting it as free agency, like it's only a few days before. I got him signed 3.34 for the next 3 years. Georgiev hasn't been a starter yet, and it sounds like they want him to be the starter over Francouz, so a bit risky there. Kadri hasn't come back yet, but they are trying to bring him back. I think they might have the cap space. Never mind, they got $4 million, so if they want to bring back Kadri, they have to trade some away. It'd probably have to be like Eric Johnson, which might cost them money to move. They're probably done. So looking at the guys they signed, the prices they paid, I honestly think they could have done a better job. I do like to see, they kept most of the guys there aside from Kadri Kemper. They do bring in, of course, Georgiev to give Francouz a tandem, but yeah, I think they could have done a little bit better of a job, I think. But when you win the Stanley Cup, guys ask for more money. I understand that. I'm going to give them a C-. Again, I think Nichushkin's a bit of a long-term deal there for a power forward. Usually they kind of fall off later in their career. I think Lehkonen was a bit expensive, and of course, they lost Kadri, and I feel like that was your best player, so my priority would have been re-signing him. Now, the Blue Jackets are up next, guys. This is a tough one because they got the best signing of the day, getting the #1 free agent in Johnny Gaudreau, 7 years, $9.75 million. I thought it was 9.5, but it must have came out as 9.75 right now. But then they signed Eric Goodbranson, 4 years, $4 million, which was probably the worst signing of the day. Like, Goodbranson's a solid bottom-pairing defenseman. He's a physical guy, good character guy. I'm not paying him more than $1.5 million, and I'm probably not going to give him more than a 2-year deal. So 4 years, $4 million for him, it's a lot. Like, I don't understand that one at all. So this one is so tough to grade because, again, Johnny Gaudreau on its own is an A+. Goodbranson on its own is an F. You got to combine the two. I feel like the Gaudreau signing probably outweighs the Goodbranson signing, so I'm going to give the Blue Jackets an A-. Again, I feel like the Gaudreau signing matters more than the Goodbranson one. It's pretty crazy, too. They basically gave Gaudreau Seth Jones money. Now, the only thing is they have to make a trade. They got $3 million left in cap space to sign Bemstrom and Laine and Blankenberg. Blankenberg should cost like $1 million. Bemstrom should cost like $2 million. So Laine, really, they need the money for. A lot of people saying they're probably going to trade away Nyquist. Hopefully for them, they can do that without paying any assets. But yeah, Johnny Gaudreau signing, did not expect him to go to Columbus. I know Nasher, my one friend, big Columbus fans, they're very excited. So happy for them. Next here, guys, the Dallas Stars. Colin Miller, 2 years, $1.85. I think a really good contract. Mason Marchment, 4 years, $4.5. I think that's a lot of money to spend on a guy. If we can go down here and show you. 47 points, 54 years. So he went off last year on the Florida Panthers, who were also a crazy team. But year before that, 10-33 with the Leafs, 18-24 in the AHL. I don't know. I think this is one of those contracts that you're paying a guy on his best season on a contract year, and I'm not sure it's going to be sustainable. Other than that, they really didn't do anything. So Miller contract really good. Marchman, I think they paid a little bit too much too, so I'm going to give them a C. I feel like a C is fair for the Dallas Stars. Now, my favorite team, up next, the Detroit Red Wings. Yzerman was active yesterday. You got Mark Piszczek actually signed today. Dude can play forward or defense. I love the versatility. Andrew Kopp, from Ann Arbor, played for Michigan. The fact he's a hometown boy, getting signed 5 years, $5.6 million. I think that's a very reasonable contract for a second-line center. Andrew Kopp last year really played well with the Jets and even better on the Rangers. You guys can see 35-56. Then he was over a point per game with the Rangers, 14-20 in the playoffs. The dude can play power play, can play PK. He can play in your first line if you need him to. I think the most suited role for him is second-line center. Can also be a third-line guy. Behind him, you got Dominic Kubalik, let go by the Blackhawks. 2 years, $2.5 million. David Perron, 2 years, $4.75. If you guys don't know, Perron last year put up 57 and 67. I mean, look at his totals like the last 5 years. Like, the dude can put up points, that is for sure. Ben Sherratt. Now, this wasn't the best signing by Yzerman. I don't know if it's quite as bad as Goodbranson, as I feel like Sherratt's got a bit better of a game. Now, he is getting paid $750K more. Same years there at 4. I would probably give the Sherratt signing on its own like a D-, not an F though like Goodbranson. Only matter 1 year, 2.25. That's not too bad to add, to our top 6 defense. So overall, guys, all these signings combined, I don't think I can give Detroit an A+ because I don't like the Sherratt signing, but I think the rest of them are really, really good. And I feel like Detroit needed a lot of work, and Yzerman went out and signed a ton of guys. Like, we basically got a brand new second line with Kopp and Perron. I feel like Kubalik's probably on the third line with Suter and Zadina. So because Yzerman, did so much here, brought in some players really needed, I'm going to give them an A. Again, if it wasn't for the Sherratt signing, I would have given them an A+. Next up here, guys, Edmonton Oilers. So Evander Kane I'll count, July 13th there. I think it happened like 1 a.m. or whatever Eastern time. 4 years, $5 million. I think that's a really good contract for him. He played great with McDavid at the end of the season, as well as, of course, in the playoffs. You can see 39 and 43, 17 and 15 playoff games. I mean, he seemed to fit like a glove there on the Oilers. A lot of people were saying he was going to get $7 million. He got 5 there at 4 years. I think that's quite reasonable. Good signing by Holland. Jack Campbell, that was another big signing. 5 years, $5 million. So this one could be risky. Like, goalies, it's so hard to judge goalies. Anyone who thinks, they know what a goalie's going to do, you are just, kidding yourself. Goalies are so up and down. Now, with the Leafs last year, made the All-Star game, and then after the All-Star game, numbers went down, but overall he had 2.64, 0.914 the year before, 2.15, 0.921. In the playoffs, you can see the year before, really nice numbers, 1.81 with 0.934. This year, not so good. I think that's why Dubas will move on from him. He brought in Murray Samsonov, so hopefully the Oilers, get the All-Star goalie, the Jack Campbell, as well as 2020, 2021. If not, that's a lot of money. It's tough. I mean, ideally, your Campbell contract's probably like, 3.5, 4 by 4, 5 or 5 for free agent. It's not terrible. Rhett Kulak here, 2.75 for 4 years, I think is actually a really good contract. I feel like Kulak's one of the more underrated, just kind of solid defensemen in the league. Obviously, he's not a flashy guy going to put up points or whatever, but he just has a solid game. So I really like that contract and kind of actually keeping him on the team after they got him at the deadline. So overall, I think the Oilers, I'm going to have to give a B+ to. I think they did pretty good. If the Campbell contract were just a little bit cheaper, a little bit shorter years, they'd be in that A range. But yeah, overall, I'm going to give them a B+. Florida Panthers up next. I really like the moves they made. For some reason, the Sharks put out Rudolph Balcer. I still don't understand that one. They got him signed there, 1 year, $750K. Mark Stahl, same contract, veteran defenseman. Might not be in the lineup every night, but I mean, for that cheap, it's a good ad. Nick Cousins, 2 years for $1 million isn't bad. Colin White, bought out by the Senators. They get him for $1.2 million. Hopefully, he can kind of rebound with the Panthers. Lester Ryan in there, 2 years, 1.5. Was a little bit earlier in the week, but overall, Panthers didn't really have a lot of cap space to work with. Considering that, I think they made really nice moves. Again, their hands were tied. They didn't have a lot of money to spend. Right now, they're over the cap, but I think they're going to have somebody on LTIR or something. So, yeah, considering the fact they didn't have a lot of money to spend, I think they did about as good as you could expect. So I'm giving them an A-. Only reason it's not higher is simply because they didn't really wow me or anything, but, they did a really solid job. LA Kings up next. Brett Lemieux brought back 1 year, 1.35 for a guy that's in the box half the game. Phoenix Copley there, I assume for the AHL, because they have Peterson and Quick still. Alex Edler, I really like this contract, $150K for him. I know he's older, but I think that's good value. Anderson gets re-signed, same with Carl Gunstrom. Campe, we'll just count it, because, it's, again, only a few days ago. $5.5 million for 4 years. He had a very solid season last year. What was it? 54.78 games. I think that's good value. So, they didn't really bring in too many more guys. They basically just re-signed their own. No bad contract here either, though, so I'm probably going to give the LA Kings a B. I feel like they did, a pretty good job. Minnesota Wild up next. So, Marc-Andre Fleury, they get to keep $3.5 million for 2 years, and keeping him caused them to trade Cam Talbot for Philip Gustafsson, which I think gives them a solid young goalie to kind of replace Kakinen, potentially as a future goalie. Jacob Middleton, 3 years, $2.5 million, isn't too bad for like a solid defensive defenseman. I think that's like really all the moves the Minnesota Wild did. They still have a bit of money there. No one to re-sign because obviously those buyouts from Parise and Suter are hurting the team. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. I think the Fleury contract's quite reasonable. I think I'm going to give them a B as well. Really, can't complain, but again, they didn't wow me or anything like that. Montreal Canadiens up next, so they didn't really do anything. I don't think they signed anybody. Yeah, July 11th. They still have to sign Kirby Dach there, Samuel Montembeault. They didn't bring anybody. Now, they didn't sign any bad contracts either, so I'm not going to give them an F or anything like that. I guess stay the course, didn't do anything. How much cap space did they have to work with? They had no cap, so they couldn't really do anything. So, I mean, this is a hard one. I guess give them a C- because they couldn't do anything. I guess they maybe tried to trade away, though, one of their wingers or whatever. So, yeah, I don't know. They didn't do anything. We're going to give them a D+. I think a D+, a better rating. Nashville Predators up next. Kevin Lankinen, 1 year, 1.5. I don't really get this one. You have Saros. I feel like Connor Ingram's a pretty good backup goalie. Philip Forsberg, we count it. They don't lose him to free agency. That's huge. $8.5 million there. 8-year contract. Really, yeah, not a whole lot going on here. I think not losing Forsberg, though, is huge. Other than that, though, they didn't really do anything. They have a bit of cap space still, $9.2 million that they could have used. So, because they didn't lose Forsberg, I'm going to give them a C-. Would definitely like to see them be a bit more active. And next, you guys get the Devils. They signed Brendan Smith there, 2 years, $1.1 million. I mean, it's probably just like a depth adding. It's whatever. Their big signing was actually today, I think late last night to be correct. Andre Palat there, 5 years, $6 million. I really like Palat, but he's 31 years old now. I didn't realize he's already that old. This contract, I think, will be good for the first couple years for sure, but the 3 after that, it might start to look really bad. Now, I do like the fact they're going out and adding somebody to try and be competitive. A lot of rumors they're going to get Johnny Gaudreau, but that did not happen. And Palat was honestly probably like the next best winger they could have signed. I feel like Tatar's contract's not for this year, so you just basically give Palat his money at that point. I like the signing. I think, in the future it could be bad, but right now it's solid. So I'm going to give them a B. I think, yeah, it's a good contract. Didn't overpay him too much. I think fair value for him would have been like 5, 5.5. So yeah, I'm going to give the Devils there a B. Up next, New York Islanders. So didn't really do anything. I know they re-signed a bunch of AHL guys or whatever, but they had some cap space, $11 million. They were also in talks to potentially get Johnny Gaudreau. They missed on that. Noah Dobson still got re-signed. Sam Romanov, Kiefer Bellows. Again, a kind of a team that didn't do anything, but unlike Montreal, they had cap space to do something. I got to give them a D because I feel like they should have been more active. They missed out on Johnny Gaudreau. Obviously, they didn't sign any bad contracts, so they're not going to be an F, but I think if you don't do anything and you have money, I guess, and you're trying to be competitive like they are, I got to give them a D. New York Rangers up next. So they get Vincent Trocheck there, big contract, 7 years, $5.6 million. So he's 28, that pays him until he's 35. You also have a Lack there, 1 year, 1.5 to back up Shesterkin, isn't bad at all. Louis Domingue as well, I guess, insurance option. Hyatt got re-signed, Gauthier. Ryan Carpenter, 1 year, $750K. So the Trocheck signing, I think, is pretty good value in terms of the number. Maybe a bit long in terms of the year, but that's probably why they're able to get it, lower value. Of course, they'll be signing at the 2C slot behind Mika Zibanejad. So I like that signing. I feel like as well, Halak should be a solid veteran goaltender behind Shesterkin. I'm going to give the Rangers a B+ here. I think, they did what they needed to do and found some good players for those roles. Ottawa Senators up next, team that's been super active. They actually just re-signed Josh Norris, 8 years, just under $8 million. It's a lot of money for Josh Norris. I really like him, played for Michigan, but wow, like 55 points last year, 66 games is really good, 35 goals as well. The thing is, the year before, 35-56 is like, not an $8 million player. 55-66, I would say, is. And he's still young. He's like 23 years old. They're definitely, paying for his future. Ideally, I think I was saying you wanted to sign him for like, 6 to 7. They paid him 8, so a little bit high, 8 years. If he continues to play well, obviously it's a good contract. If he slows down a bit, it's a bad one. I really don't see him outplaying this contract. Like, for him to be a $10 million player, he'd have to start putting up, close to 100 points, which I don't see happening. So, because of that, I'm going to, say the contract's a bit expensive. Claude Giroux, though, returns to his hometown team, which is really cool if you guys didn't know. He grew up in Gatineau, which is, like, right next to Ottawa. 3 years there, $6.5 million. He's 34 years old, so till 37. His game, though, like, he's more of a passer. He should be able to, keep up the production. They re-signed Norris, a bit expensive. They bring in Claude Giroux, which I think is huge for Ottawa. Like, they're not really a team that's ever gotten a big free agent signing like that. Even though Norris is a bit expensive, I'm still going to give him an A. If Norris was, say, 6.5 to 7, that probably would have been an A+. But again, very excited for Ottawa to see what they do next year. Of course, with the break it on the team as well. Next year, guys, Philadelphia Flyers. So, Troy Grosenick, Justin Braun, 1 year. Nick Delorier, 4 years, 1.75. An interesting choice for like a fourth-line winger. Of course, the rumor is Johnny Gaudreau wanted to sign there, but they didn't have the cap space. Now, they could have traded away JVR. Probably would have cost them an asset, whether it be a prospect and or a pick. And they weren't comfortable doing that. Of course, too, at the draft, brought in Tony DeAngelo, but that's the draft. That's not free agency. So I'm giving the Flyers an F. Pretty simply, you had a chance to sign Johnny Gaudreau, and you weren't willing to do it. You weren't willing to create the cap space by trading away JVR. Of course, you don't give a pick or prospect. Also, too, if you do that, you probably don't give Nicolas Deslauriers that really bad contract, in my opinion. So, yeah, the Flyers get an F for just missed opportunity, essentially, and rather swinging for the fences, they decided to go with status quo, which doesn't really make much sense to me. San Jose Sharks up next here. Oscar Lindblom, 2 years, 2.5. This is a really weird one, too. So the Flyers also bought out Oscar Lindblom, who was only going to make, I think, $3 million for 1 more year. And he ends up getting an almost identical contract, like $500K cheaper. Nico Sturm there, 3 years, $2 million, really solid defensive bottom 6 forward. And as I was ending, guys, I realized I completely skipped over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Don't ask me how that happened, so that's why there's no face cam. So Casey DeSmith re-signed 2 years, 1.8. I think is good value for a pretty solid backup. Chris Letang, 6 years, $6 million. Obviously pays him at least 41, but they went with the cheaper cap hit on a longer-term deal, which honestly makes sense because their window to compete is right now. When he's older, they're getting that bad cap hit. They don't care. They're in a rebuild at that point. Alex Nylander, 150K, I think is really good value. Ricardo Kelvey capped. I actually didn't expect that. 6 years, $5 million. I think is pretty solid for a top 6 winger. Joseph there gets signed, 2 years, and $25K. Malkin, this is the big one. Say he was going to free agency, and then like in the final hours, signs in Pittsburgh. So they keep the core together. 4 years, $6.1 million. He's still a very good player. That's actually like a really good contract for Malkin. Last year, he averaged, I think, over a point per game. Yeah, he had 42 and 41. He had 6 and 7 playoff games. Like, he is still such a good player. $6 million for him is a steal. Drake Caggiula, Ouellette, some depth signings. Jan Rutta, they actually added the defense, 2.75. Josh Archibald even. From the Oilers, they bring in 900K. Be a solid kind of bottom 6 winger. I like what the Pittsburgh Penguins did. I feel like, not breaking up the core was huge for them. Keeping Letang, Malkin, everyone. I feel like they got good value on Raquel, even Rutta there. So I'm giving the Pittsburgh Penguins an A-. I feel like definitely deserves an A. Not sure if they blew me away enough for the A or A+, but good job overall. They bring in Sturm and Lindblom. They bought out Rudolph Balcers, which made no sense to me. They also traded away Brent Burns, of course, to the Hurricanes. I didn't really think they got back enough for him when they're retaining $2.7 million on his contract. So the Burns trade, Lindblom signing, Sturm signing. I feel like without the Burns trade, it's probably a B-. With the Burns trade, because I think they lost, I'm going to give them a C-. I feel like they probably should have gotten more for Brent Burns. Now, people are pretty high on that goalie prospect, McAnimy, which, again, goalies are hard to judge, so if he does turn out, it makes the trade a bit better. But with how much they retained, I feel like they should have gotten more. And then Lindblom and Sturm are both essentially like third-line forwards. You got $9.5 million in cap space. Apparently, they don't want to rebuild. They want to be competitive. I would have expected them to do more, so C- there for the Sharks. And after that, we got the Seattle Kraken. We're actually pretty busy. So they get Martin Jones there, 1 year, $2 million. At first, I didn't understand this one at all. They already have Grubauer and Drieger. But apparently, Drieger's going to be on LTIR to start the season. I forget what the injury is he has. So they needed a backup. Martin Jones for $2 million. Isn't the best, not the worst. Justin Schultz there, 2 years, $3 million. Pretty good puck-moving defense, which I don't really think they had much of. So I think that's a nice signing. And then Andre Burakovsky, 5 years, $5.5 million. Hopefully, play as well as he did last year with the Avs. Obviously, contract year, he's going to do better. 60 points, 80 games. And you can put up 60 points again. I think that's a really good contract. And again, I think Justin Schultz gives them something they didn't really have there. You can see most of these guys are more like defensive defensemen. So Schultz something they need. Burakovsky adds some offense because they needed that. Shane Wright, Matty Beniers now full season. I think the Kraken did pretty good. I'm going to give them a B-. I feel like nothing crazy, but definitely solid. St. Louis Blues here. Josh Levo, basically a nothing signing. Grice there to be the backup behind Binnington, 1 year, pretty cheap. Nola Chari, decent, bottom 6 forward. Nick Leddy. So I will say, I didn't like this signing, not because I don't really like Nick Leddy, but because they probably could have kept David Perron instead of Nick Leddy, and I think that makes more sense. Like, they already had, good offensive defensemen, Torrey Krug, Justin Falk, Pareko's there, Scandella, Bertuzzo, Mikula, Prunovic. You fill those guys in below them. I don't really think they needed Leddy. I feel like Perron would be a more impactful player for them. I'm happy, obviously, because Detroit went out and got David Perron, but yeah, Perron made more sense. Now, Robert Thomas got extended long-term, 8 years there, $8 million. A little expensive, kind of like Norris, but again, they're paying for what they think he'll be. And he did have over point per game last year, 77 and 72, with 57 assists. Norris, of course, more of the scorer. Thomas, the playmaker. So the fact they got him long-term, if he does continue to play that well, the contract's worth it. So overall, I think they filled a lot of holes they needed to. I just think the Leddy contract, Perron would have been better. Still, though, the Leddy on its own isn't that bad for the money. I'll give them a B+. Actually, guys, watching this back, I feel like I was too easy on St. Louis, losing Perron to sign Nick Leddy, so I'm downgrading this to a B- because I do like the Robert Thomas signing. Now after that, guys, you got the Tampa Bay Lightning. So this is such an interesting time for them. They got Eric Chernick, Anthony Cirelli, Mikhail Sergachev all extended. Not this season, but for the season after. Chernick there, $5.2 million for 8 years. Cirelli, $6.25. Sergachev, $8.5 million. That's a lot of money for Sergachev because he's not a number one defenseman. The number one defenseman on that team is Victor Hedman. I feel like they probably see Sergachev as their future number one, but he's never really been in that role. Like, a lot of times he'll play even bottom pair for them, plus special teams, or second pair. I don't know. It's a lot of money for a guy who I don't think has proven he can be that number one yet. I like him. I don't know. I just think it's a lot of money. Cirelli, 6.25, I think is pretty good value. I think that's right around what you expect for him. Chernick, 5.2 is probably a bit expensive. He's more of like a 4.5 guy, but again, it's not too far off. So those extensions, you got Nemestikov rejoining the team, 1 year, 2.5, I think is good value. Hayden Fleury, 2 years there at $750K or just over, I think is awesome value. Ian Cole, 1 year, $3 million. I think once they realized they weren't getting Andre Palat, they brought him in. Of course, too, they lost Jan Ruda. So they kind of bring in a bunch of players they need. Now, for next year, like, the team looks solid. I feel like they knew their defense needed work after losing Ryan McDonough. They signed Ian Cole, of course. They trade him for Myers. They bring in Hayden Fleury, so that looks good. And then got the younger parts of their core all extended. So Tampa Bay, I think, did a really good job. You obviously could say they could have given a bit cheaper, but I got to give them an A-. Now, the only thing I'll say, guys, I'm giving them an A-, but I'm curious to see what they do next year because they got just under $4 million there with only 12 players on their roster. Now, that doesn't include Brent Seabrook being on LTIR, so really it's like $11 million for 12 players, but still, that's, you know, just under $1 million per player for almost half their team. They're going to have to find some really good value contracts. Good thing is, it's a lot easier to fill out the bottom half of your team with just kind of cheap $1 million players than it is to find those star players, so that's why I don't really, mind them giving all those guys those long-term extensions. Getting them under contract, I think, again, those are harder to do than the depth players. So, A- for Tampa Bay. They filled a bunch of holes. They got the younger core players re-signed already for the season after next. I like what they did. Toronto Maple Leafs here. Ilya Samsonov, 1 year, $1.8 million. I love that signing. A lot of question marks about Matt Murray, not just his play, but his health. Samsonov there. All of a sudden, that's a really solid tandem. Adam Gaudette, good depth forward there for cheap. Same with Mulligan. Nicholas Aube-Kubel was just on the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. Another good bomb six forward. So, Dubas really not a lot of money to work with. Still has $2 million to get Engvall and Sandin. Definitely has the money for Engvall. I feel like this is a big offshoot opportunity. If I'm a team that has some cap space, come in at like $4.5 million, where you only have to give up a second round pick, and the Leafs probably can't match it. And Sandin is a really good young defenseman. See how they get him re-signed with Engvall, but so far I think solid signs there, especially the Samsonov one. I'm gonna give them a B. I feel like they did what they needed to do, but didn't do anything too crazy. And right as I was about to click render on this video, guys, Toronto Maple Leafs just signed Cal Yarncroc to a 4-year, $2.1 million contract. I think that's very good value. Obviously, last year didn't play too good with the Flames, but he was having a pretty decent season with the Predators before that, or I should say the Kraken, sorry. 26 and 49, 4 points, 12 games in the playoffs. Obviously, no goals to the Flames, but again, kind of a similar contract to what he had before. He was making like 2 something on a long-term deal. Yeah, $2 million right on for 6 years there with the Predators. So he likes those, long-term insurance deals. I think it's a really good signing by Toronto. They also got some depth defensemen there. Victor Mete, Jordy Ben. Honestly, too, I feel like I wasn't really giving Dubas enough credit for the Ilya Samsonov signing. Like, that's kind of the exact goalie he needed. So, all those new signings, I'm bumping up the Leafs to probably a B+. It would be an A- if it wasn't for the fact that they only have $750K left, which is probably enough to swing an Engvall contract. But I feel like they're going to lose Sandin because of this. Now, maybe they already knew that or something. I don't know. But interested to see what happens there. And like I said, I'm going to go with a B+ now for the Leafs. After that, guys, we have the Vancouver Canucks. So, Ilya Mikheyev, 4 years, $4.75. Lazar there, 3 years at $1 million. Colin Delia, 1 year, $750K, just to be like a third-string goalie, I think. I will say, I think Mikheyev got paid way too much. He's 27 years old, so he's not too old or anything, but almost $5 million for a guy who had 32 points last year, 53 games. Andre Burakovsky got, like $750K more than this. Definitely a better player. I think Mikheyev, that's going to turn out to be a bad signing. So, because of that, because they didn't really do much else, I got to give them like a D+, I think. I just don't like that signing. And after that, guys, you got the Vegas Golden Knights signing Riley Smith, 3 years there at $5 million, which on its own isn't a bad contract at all. I think it's actually very fair, but they had to trade away Max Pacioretty to do that. I think Pacioretty at $7 million is a better player. They don't have the term on him, but I mean, still, you hope you get him re-signed. Howden there, 1 year, 1.5. It's honestly probably a little bit expensive for Howden, what he's done so far. So, yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights here, guys, trade away Pacioretty, and only for free. They threw in Dylan Coghlan. Yeah, I think I have to give them an F. I mean, you lost Pacioretty for nothing, multiple 30-goal scorer, and you also lose Dylan Coghlan, who's a solid young defenseman, could help your team. And yeah, how can you not give them an F after they give away a young defenseman to lose Max Pacioretty? I mean, it's pretty hard to argue that's not a failing grade. Washington Capitals here, so they were pretty busy. Darcy Kemper, the new starting goalie. We knew they were signing somebody after trading away Vanacek and Ilya Samsonov. It made sense. It had to be Kemper if Campbell was going to the Oilers, which was the big rumor. 5 years there, $5.25 million. That contract's really not that bad at all. Just over the price of Jack Campbell. I think Kemper, most people would say, is the better goalie, and I think he's only like a year older. Now, 5 years, 32. That's pays him until he's 37. I don't know if he'll still be playing that good at 37. Luckily, goalies, can play longer into their career. Mark Johansson comes back to the Capitals, 1 year, $1.1 million. That's not bad at all. This one here, Charlie Lindgren, 3 years at 1.1. It's kind of weird to give a backup. That's really not even that great of a backup that long of term. Eric Gustafsson, 1 year, $800K. He can be like a decent offensive defenseman, help chip in or whatever. I think Capitals got what they needed to get. They got Darcy Kemper. That was the best goalie in the free agent market. They also brought in Connor Brown, which I thought was a nice trade at the Ottawa Senators. Only give a second-round pick for him. And now, shortly after I recorded the video, guys, Washington went out and signed Dylan Strome to a 1 year, $3.5 million contract, which is actually so funny because I think that's right around the amount that Chicago would have had to qualify him for. So, again, they could have done that and just traded him for picks. I love this signing for Washington. I feel like between him and Connor Brown, they should be able to replace the production of Nick Backstrom. They also get Henrik Borgstrom there, solid young player, $750K for a 1 year deal. I feel like that's a great contract, zero risk, could potentially turn out big for them. Again, I really like what they did. I think the only knock on them would probably be the fact that they lost Ilya Samsonov for free. Maybe Darcy Kemper's contract's a bit long, but I don't think you get him signed without the 5 year deal, and they needed that elite starting goalie. So overall, love what Washington did. Gonna give them an A. And then finally here, guys, we got the Winnipeg Jets. So they get David Riddick there to back up Connor Hellebuck since they lost Comrie. 1 year, $900K isn't bad at all. And I just realized that's all they've done so far. Everything else here is 2021. Now, they have a lot of work left to do. Mason Appleton's new contract, that should be like no more than 1.5. Pierre-Luc Dubois going to cost a lot of money. And I don't think he's going to sign for longer than 2 years because he wants to test free agency. But other than that, they actually have all their players under contract. Thing is, $15 million to spend. And like Dubois is the only guy that's going to cost a lot of money. They definitely could have been more active than that, trying to be more competitive. They're a team, though, I don't really know what they're trying to do. Like, are they trying to retool, get younger? Are they trying to stay competitive? Like, with Connor Hellebuck in net, with Wheeler, Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, you're not going to be a bad team. So, in that case, grab some guys, right? And they tend to anything other than, getting a backup goalie. So, I feel like I got to give them a D just because, yeah, they weren't active enough for me. I feel like I don't know their identity. So, Jets get a D, and that's where we'll end it, guys. Let me know in the comments section what you thought of my grades. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If you enjoyed the video, leave that thumbs up. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, hit someone down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.